All right. Well, we are on fire. Same day, a little break. Last lecture of the chapter. I'm ready. We are on chapter 4 still, but we're on lecture 4. It's the last lecture of the material where we'll just talk about the 2 remaining tissue types. They're not as long and involved and kooky crazy as epithelial and connective. Thank goodness. They're pretty straightforward. And a few miscellaneous things associated with the chapter of tissue repair and membranes. And actually, we're starting out with membranes. Do you like that? I'm just itching myself with my pen. I should probably start over with recording, but I'm not gonna because we're doing it. You're seeing me, warts and all. And I'm not seeing you, so you can be scratching yourself with your pen, picking your nose. I hope I didn't pick my nose on camera. That would be mortifying. All right. So let's get started. Just whatever. I'm tingling. We just finished. I'm trying to get the slideshow. Okay. We just finished talking about connective tissue in the last lecture. So we had epithelial tissue and connective tissue. And those two are kind of buddies. They're like BFFs. Kind of stick together quite a bit. Or I should say epithelial relies on connective tissue. It's not the other way around. So I guess connective tissue is epithelial tissue's crutch, right? Connective tissue is getting all the blood supply, which will then diffuse and work with the epithelial tissue. So, it's a very, linked relationship between the two. And if you remember in our levels of organization, if we have 2 different tissue types working together for a common function, that's an organ. And the simplest organ in our body is a membrane. And a membrane gets to be an organ because it's 2 different types of tissues working together. So membranes are really, they're simple organs. It says I'll have the epithelial membranes with the connective tissue, and even synovial membrane will also be with connective tissue. So when I look at epithelial membranes, they're lining a surface. I'll leave it at that. There's 3 different subtypes. I have mucous membranes, I have serous membranes, and I have cutaneous membrane. The cutaneous membrane is your skin. All right, so that one is actually a little more complicated, and it gets to be called the integumentary system, and that's our first real system that we are going to be talking about. Because there's other organs. There's the cutaneous membrane with the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, but there's skin and nails and oil glands and sweat glands. So I kind of have a couple different structures, and therefore it gets to be a system. We talked in lab about serous membranes. Serous membranes are in enclosed body cavities. And, oh, come on, you. Let me angle my pen a little bit more. Enclosed body cavities, and they had 2 layers, right? This was in chapter 1 of lecture and exercise 2 of lab. So they're in enclosed body cavities. They do not see the light of day. There's 2 layers. Let me see. Is it on this one? Not really. Okay, that's kind of a crappy picture. And then mucous membranes line. There's my pen. Oops. Mucous membranes kind of line body surfaces that are exposed to substances. I guess exposed to the outside. So you're like, what do you mean by that? Mucous membranes line the respiratory tract, the digestive tract, the reproductive tract, okay? Oops. All of these, oh, son of a biscuit. Didn't swear. These are all lined with mucous membrane, so it has protection and, let's see, line functions. All right, so now let's go to this slide here. Okay, so a mucous membrane. Look, I gave you a definition of it. I already gave you. I'm trying to find my pen here. Mucous membrane. So they line body cavities open to the outside. I have to sneeze. And we just said that, and here it's showing you the digestive tract. But like I said, it's also the respiratory tract, it's also the reproductive tract. You will find mucous membranes. And so you have these glandular epithelial, because it's epithelial, so it's a membrane, because it's an epithelial layer. I forgot to talk about that. And then it has the connective tissue working together as its basement membrane, giving it its nutrients, taking away its waste. So these two together make it epithelial connective tissue, make it be a membrane. And these are lining the outer cavity, open to the outside. I don't say outer cavity. The other one we have is the serous membrane. Serous membranes are lining enclosed body cavities. So we have, and like we talked in lab, we have serous membranes around the lungs. We have a serous membrane around the heart. We have serous membrane aligning the whole abdomen called the peritoneum. And it's 2 layers. Right? Serous membranes are 2 layers with liquid in the middle to reduce friction between, to reduce friction. Right? That's their purpose. Serous fluids in the middle between the outer parietal and the inner visceral layer. What else do we have? We have skin. On the outer surface of the body is the cutaneous membrane, but that then makes up the majority of the integumentary system. And then this last one that we have, it's kind of interesting, is the synovial membrane. Synovial membrane lines joints that move, okay? And we're going to learn that. And what this does is they also make a fluid, make synovial fluid to reduce friction and a shock absorption. Ooh, shock absorption. Because your joints take a lot of beating, you know, and so if this is like bone number 1 and this is bone number 2 where they come together as a joint, and if it's a movable joint, it will have a synovial membrane lining this whole cavity. Whoop-de-whoop-de. And it makes a synovial fluid, and that gets dumped into that joint cavity. Joint cavity contains it to reduce friction. Because if you get bone rubbing on bone, so you have this synovial fluid, you also, which I just wrote all over, is the ends along bones, if you probably don't remember, but they're covered with hyaline cartilage, right, to also protect the ends. Because if bone rubs on bones, it actually stimulates bone growth, and that gets you bone spurs and things like that. Excuse me, sorry. My nose is running. I just snuggled the cat, and now I'm having sinus issues. Of course. All right, so that's my simplest organ of epithelial and connective tissue involvement. So we go to muscular tissue, our third tissue type, and muscular tissue has 3 subcategories. So their function is to movement, but that helps you with maintain posture, and then, you know, from shivering and producing heat as a part of thermoregulation. So when we look at these 3, hold on, okay, we want to know, so these are your 3. You always want to answer these questions. Answer these questions. 1, is it voluntary or involuntary? Voluntary or involuntary means, can I control it? If I can control it, then it's voluntary. Right? If it's yes, then it, oh, sucker. If I can't control it, it's involuntary, and we're going to get into that. The next one is it striped? Does it have striations? I'm doing these in weird order. Does it have striations? Striations, not get that mixed up with stratified. Okay, striations is stripes. And later on, we're going to go into depth about what those stripes are, but not today, not in this chapter. 3, how many nuclei in the cell? One or more than one. 4, location, where do you find it? 5, cell shape. I see as the years go on, I make this list longer. It only used to have 3 and then went to 4, now it's at 5. Okay, so we're going to march through these 5 questions on all 3 of these types. I have 3 types of muscular tissue: skeletal muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and smooth muscle tissue. And they're found in different places in the body. So, skeletal. I'm just curious. Okay. Oh, you know what? I need that little question thing. So here is my cell shape. Long cylinders. So here's cell shape. Is one question. Striated. Has striations. Ooh, nice spelling. And that's the stripes here. Okay, so 1, it's a long cylinder, which I'm unable to really draw that. 2, it has striations. 3, many nuclei. And that's, here's 1, here's another, here's another. 3 nuclei are shown in this one. Voluntary. I can control it. You can't always control it if it's part of a reflex, of course, but you can control it. Function, so then that is 1, 2, 3. The 4th one is, where do I find it? Oh. And so that's kind of funny. It doesn't say location. Location. It is across long bones. So skeletal muscle is a muscle that you can, oh, make me a muscle. And you can see your flappy tricep, and you have your deltoids, and however you move your head is all because of muscles crossing bones. So this is, right, steak. Steak is skeletal muscle, and I am a meat eater, and I know there's vegetarians, so I'm sorry, but that's how I get my protein. All right, so these are all skeletal muscles, different ones. We're going to learn about, I don't know which one's going to learn about, because everyone's going to learn about different ones, so I'm kind of intrigued to see how that plays out. All right, so skeletal muscles across long bones. We'll just say across bones. Okay. Superficial to bones. Oh, except the diaphragm is also skeletal muscle, and that is pretty deep. Okay. All right, so those were the questions answered for skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle is striated, but here's something else that's interesting. It's branched. Okay, so its shape is branched. Branched, and they're long. So they're long and they're branched. Kind of like bamboo. Okay, so shape. Branched. Branched and long. Has striations. Yep, I has my striations. So that's my question 1. Question 2. Usually has 1 nucleus, okay? 1 nucleus in a cell. So these little wacky guys here are marking the ends of a cell. And these are very special gap junctions. Remember, the gap junction was the straws and me, the straws and Roger, and we're swapping guts. Well, these have very special gap junctions called intercalated discs. So that's also something unique about its shape. And involuntary control. I do go back and forth with that one. Cardiac muscle pumps blood to all parts of the body, so that means that 5, I know I changed the order of the numbers, but there's still 5. Location is the heart. Okay, so this is your heart muscle tissue. Your myocardium is cardiac muscle found in the heart. So I go back to the involuntary control because Can you meditate and control your heart rate? Yeah, but your body's going to override it. So we're going to stick with involuntary control because for the most part, you're not thinking, okay, heartbeat, beat, 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 right? 75 times a minute, 60 times a minute, whatever your heart rate is. So that's why it's involuntary. Right, so that's type number 2. And it looks like bamboo, but you don't have to know these pictures for lab. But then you have these intercalated discs, which are those very special gap junctions. And you have your striations and your single nucleus per cell. Okay, now we have smooth muscle tissue. Smooth muscle tissue has a wacky little shape here. So it's kind of squatty, small tapering end cell. So that's my shape. One nucleus. And you'll see, usually in the middle, that it's involuntary. You don't control it. No striations. No stripes. Okay? You don't control. Come on, you. One more time. All right, 2 more times. I'm trying to write really soft and speak soft because it goes hand in hand. All right, function. So let's see location. Location is that it lines hollow organs. Of course, I say it lines hollow organs like your digestive tract. But then this guy is talking about the eyeball. So it is also in the iris of your eye to control the pupil. Okay, the pupil is the black spot in the middle of your eyeball. That's actually a hole that lets light in. And the iris is going to do that to protect the retina. Retina is at the back of your eye, and it has all your light-sensitive cells called rods and cones for allowing you to have vision. Well, one part of vision. Anyway, you will have smooth muscle also, okay, lining blood vessels, because blood vessels are hollow, also hollow organs, and this smooth muscle allows for you to change the diameter to control blood pressure. I'm going to say manage. So people who are on blood pressure medication, maybe one of them is to make that be open, a vasodilator. Open up the blood vessels to reduce blood pressure if they have high blood pressure, aka hypertension. Oh, I thought I had a little table for you. So what I would recommend you guys do on a scrap piece of paper is, I heard a weird noise, skeletal, smooth, cardiac. This is going to be the ugliest table you ever wrote, ever saw. You can do a much better job. And then just write all the little things, you know? All right, so across the top. Gosh, this first one could be voluntary. Or the next one could be striations. Next one could be number of nuclei. Give yourself a table. I think you're getting it right. Okay, next one would be location. And then finally you could do cell shape, right? So we'll do, or let's do it together. Was skeletal muscle voluntary or involuntary? Voluntary, you control that one, right? Smooth muscle, involuntary. You don't control how food moves through your digestive tract. And oh, pizza, move on. Get out of the stomach, go into the duodenum. Cardiac, also involuntary, as we would be pretty busy if we were just had to tell our heart to beat. constantly, 75 times a minute. Striations, meaning stripes. Did skeletal muscle have striations? Yes. Did smooth muscle have striations? No. Did cardiac muscle have striations? Yes. Number of nuclei, skeletal muscle? More than one. Smooth muscle had one. Number of nuclei, I should say, per cell. Okay. Cardiac muscle, 1. All right, I'm going to let you fill out the rest and move on, but, you know, work the material a little bit on your own. That would be a good idea for you. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is kind of weird because it's actually just made up of cells. So nervous tissue has either neurons or neuroglia. Neurons, what do I have, a picture? I guess I kind of do have a picture. The neuron is the guy that sends along the impulse. Where am I? Here we go. Okay, he sends the impulse along. So he conducts the action potential. Ooh, big words. You can call it a nerve impulse. We'll learn it as an action potential, but not for a while. The neuroglia are supportive cells associated with neurons. And what I mean by that is there's 5 types. We're not going to go over the 5 types right now, but like one type makes myelin to insulate cells, and that's what breaks down when people have multiple sclerosis. All right, but these are supportive cells. Neuroglia protect, insulate, and support neurons. They do cell division. Neurons do not do no cell division. But we're trying, right? Get some medications or some therapies so that we can repair neurons and people aren't paralyzed. When I look at a neuron, neurons can talk to other neurons. Neurons can talk to muscle cells. Neurons can talk to glands. That is all that is saying. They can tell a gland to do something. They can tell a muscle to do something. They can tell other neurons to do something. There are 3 main regions. This is a neuron. I have the dendrites that receive info. So it could have specialized sensory receptors. I have the cell body. And then I have the axon, and this isn't showing you the whole axon. It's kind of cut off, but that will then conduct the impulse away from the cell body. Oops. Okay. See how I just gave up on trying to write the word away? Ha ha. Okay, so it gets the nerve impulse. Well, it gets the stimulus, converts it into a signal, and sends it along to other cells. That is what they do. You find nerve tissue in the brain, in the spinal cord, in peripheral nerves. I mean, you find it everywhere, really. What does this say? Oh, excitable cells. What are we learning about excitable cells? Neurons and muscle fibers are considered excitable. So here's the deal. They have some sort of electrical activity going on. Electrical activity is due to the movement of ions, all right? It's whenever you see the word electrical, think ions. What was an ion? An ion is an atom with a charge, right? Sodium, chloride with a minus, potassium, magnesium, calcium, those are ions, and because these ions move a certain way, we harness that to do work, and that work is electrical in nature. Okay, let's see. Electrical excitability is the ability to respond to stimuli, produce electrical signals such as an action potential, travels along, blah blah blah. We're not talking about voltage gated channels yet. Holy snakies, we're not ready for that. That's like chapter 11, and we're in chapter 4. So I'm moving on because I don't have too much to say about that slide. Okay, tissue repair. A couple things about tissue repair. 1, who gets to do it? Epithelial cells readily replace it. Not all connective tissues can repair. Muscle cells are also limited, and some nerve cells can do a little bit. So then the question is, when I repair, I can either repair it with functional working tissue, or, which would be what we would prefer, or I can repair it with non-functional tissue. Non-functional tissue has a fancy name of fibrosis. So fibrosis, scar tissue, that is a non-functional patch, right? It's not going to do what my skin does. My skin is covered in scars, right? They don't tan. They don't have hairs. They don't behave like the functional epidermis, non-functional tissue. So it's really just a patch. And not a good thing, right? So muscle cells, if I have damage in the heart, let's talk about this for a second. Is it going to be replaced with tissue that's still working? No, it's not. It's going to be replaced with non-functional scar tissue, and therefore my heart is no longer working like it used to be able to work, right? Give it that sort of context. Yeah, sure, you have a scar on my skin. Sure, that's no big deal, but if it's your heart that's scarred, that is a big deal. If it's nerve cells that are damaged, that's a big deal. Okay, so this is just fancy words in tissue repair. So tissue regeneration, this would mean that it's functional. Sometimes we luck out if it's not too serious. When the functioning part is, when the functioning part of a tissue participates in the repair, then I'm going to get working tissue. If I have other cells in the area, other types of connective tissue, if that participates in the repair, that's my patched guys. They are just going to patch the hole. And function is non-functional. So what are the cell signals that determines whether it's functional or non-functional? I don't know. I'll just throw that out there. Extensive tissue is going to be a little bit of both, resulting in blood and granulation tissue. That's scar tissue spreading over. Do I have a picture? No, I don't. So granulation tissue, scar tissue. I said I looked at the slides, but I didn't commit to memory. All right, so look at you young people. Younger people with their tissues get better nutrition, better blood supply, faster metabolic rate, so you're going to get better repair. Oh, look. As I get older, my repair starts sucking. And I lose elasticity. I get wrinkly. I get dry, cracky skin. Dry, khaki skin and organs, I guess. You know, things don't work as well. It's just how it goes. Oh, this was kind of interesting. Your book talked about, it's not on here. Your book talked about lupus as the homeostatic imbalance in this chapter. Systemic SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus. So I'm not going to talk about that here. I don't have any slides, but I will point you to the e-text if you're interested in learning more about lupus. Lupus attacks women more than men, women of color more than women of non-color. I don't know why. Why should that matter? That bothers me. Oh, look, here you go. So connective tissue disorders right there, lupus. That's what I was talking about. But it's a serious, it's a serious thing, and I actually do have something to say about lupus. As it tends to afflict people who are young, okay? Comes out when you're younger. So when I had a job, when I just graduated high school, there was this other girl, I think she was still in college, and she was getting to do better stuff than me because she was more trained, and she had lupus. So, and so she talked about it a little bit. And the medication, where's my pen? Okay. So medication for lupus You can turn me off if you don't want to. If this is boring to you, it's fine. The medication for lupus is an anti-inflammatory because it's your body attacking itself. And anti-inflammatory medications are typically steroids, right? And what do steroids do? Steroids cause you to put on weight. Well, if you're a young girl and you have lupus, do you want to take a steroid medication that's going to make you put on weight? No, you're not. So a lot of young women that have lupus succumb to this disease because they're not willing to take the medications because the medications cause them to put on weight, and it does, right? This young girl that I worked with at UConn Medical Center, she had some weight on her, and it was because of her medications. And you make a choice of, do I want to live or not? So just very sad to me, but anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I did want to throw that out there to you guys, that, okay, there's a disorder, but think about these other disorders in society and, perceptions and all of that with it. I don't know what that was. Anyway, I think that's my son's alarm clock. We are done. That is the end of chapter 4. Hallelujah. And oops, you know what? I guess I can be big and say thank you for your time. You have now finished chapter 4. I will be wearing a different outfit for the chapter 5 lectures. I swear I'm not doing those today. And I will see you. All right. Take care and good luck.